So in my last lot, I got a jet engine Thomas. And I'm fairly excited when I get these because they are, to a certain extent, a mystery to me. You never quite know which one you're going to get. Namely, that is the engine. This engine is actually different. I mean, by engine, I mean the engine itself, the motor, is actually different from your standard Thomas. And I'll go into more detail on that when I take it apart. Firstly, I want to talk you through what I'm going to actually do to this item. Firstly, I'm going to clean it. I have alcohol as well as Windex. Well, knockoff Windex from Bunnings. I actually prefer this. It doesn't leave as much of a streak effect in my models. Well, in my cleaning. We've also got a couple of these little containery things. I bought these for like nothing. And I like using them because I basically just fill them up with cleaning fluids and just go through them. So that's alright. Move that to the side. I've also got some Windex. So I've got Windex, alcohol, a couple of toothbrushes. I like to keep two on my table. One for alcohol, one for Windex. Because you don't want to mix these two. Alcohol will strip certain elements. So keeping the alcohol separate is very important. As well as not spilling it anywhere. Keep them off to the side. I've also got some Q-tips. But first things first, we need to talk about what this item will need in terms of spare parts. Because that's actually really quite important. First thing, it's going to need a new chassis. This is fairly badly cracked at the back. Luckily, from what I can determine, this chassis is identical to every other Thomas one. So it'll fit perfectly. Here's the spare I have lying around. You end up with a lot of these if you've been repairing for any amount of time. But because of the way things are going, I'm actually repairing Thomases. It's more cost effective to do so. We're also going to need new traction tyres. These are new old stock ones that I got from a friend of mine. I really appreciate it. And I also have some brand new ones though. These are just ones that I had lying. Well, I got because I was sort of waiting for the other ones to get in from Hong Kong. The other thing we're going to need, and I already noticed it, is if you look at the switch, there is a very subtle crack. Well, some people may think this is fine. For me, that is unacceptable. If I'm selling an item, it cannot be flawed in any way. Therefore, we will be replacing the switch as well. We'll start off with those. We may need to replace more as we go along. But also bringing in the tools I'm using. So I'm using an electric screwdriver. I don't necessarily recommend this too much. You can get by without it. This is kind of crap anyway. I have problems with it. The only reason I use it is because it saves my hand. I fucked up my hands before, and I can't be doing that again. So it's just a precaution, so it doesn't happen. We'll start off by removing the chassis. Well, not the chassis, the shell. As you see, this is a mid-07. Pretty cool to see. Which brings us to the engine. Now, as you can note, the first thing that determines whether this is the different engine is this screw here. As you can tell on this other one, there's no screw here. In fact, this whole engine is a lot smaller than this one. And that's because this one runs a tad faster than the other one. Put this Thomas away. Now, let's just give you a bit of a pre-test as to what this sounds like, how it runs. Alright. So let's get started. Now I'm going to start by taking off the rods. Now I don't really care if I damage these too badly. They're easily replaced. I am going to at least try to be gentle with the wheels. At the end of the day, a little bit of scuffing here isn't too bad because it's not very noticeable and it doesn't affect the structural integrity too much. There we go. But by now I've perfected it to the point where you can barely even tell. I think when you're starting out, it's important to know you're not going to be perfect straight away. Speaking of not perfect, that coupling rod. Some people might say, just keep it. I'm tossing it. I've got spares in droves, so it's not really a concern of mine. But again, if you're just starting out, you probably can salvage that. Next up, I like to remove this piece first, or at least this screw. Now, if you have somewhere to store these, that's great. I don't. I just tend to chuck them on the table and not forget where they are. I spilled some of that alcohol. Again, actually, I'm going to move that all the way off screen so we don't spill any more onto it. Luckily, by this point, the only piece that we need to be worried about for alcohol is is the buffers, and because we're scrapping this entire piece, it's not really a big deal. Honestly, I probably won't end up scrapping the chassis. It probably will just get paired with the Thomas and get sold for like $5. Let's see, we still have the paper. You can tell a good mechanic when it comes to these things if that paper's still there or if they've replaced it. Okay. Slight rust there. I'll probably clean that rather than replace it. There we go. Screw that. Screw that. Alright. It's aggressive, but crack. Out. Out. Inspect. Okay, that's intact. Needs a clean, and we'll get to that in a minute. This can now go. Just double check it's identical, which it is. And get put back in my Thomas box for another time. Alright, get that off. Alright, now I've got this filth. Now I could crack the wheel. I mean, not crack it, but I mean take it off and clean it. But I have another strategy that kind of works well. That is using actually this and sort of pulling it all down. Okay, and then cutting through it a bit. Tearing it off. There we go. A bit more in there, but we'll start off with the other side. Sometimes it does just come off though in big clumps. Hair is probably the biggest thing you got to deal with. And making sure you don't cut that blue plastic. I will actually try and take one of the wheels off. Yep. Just because there's a lot of hair around that. I like to quarter them as well when I do that. Makes them look a bit better. There we go. Very nice. Alright. So I'm just going to clean off the last little bit of this off camera because it's far too much of a hassle to clean it on camera sometimes. There we go. Alright. Put these new tires. Actually, give this wheel set a bit of a clean first. You get the last of the sort of real alcohol-y stuff. Well, not alcohol. You get a lot of the, I guess, traction tire residue off. I like to get rid of it. You don't have to if it's just your own. I'm selling these though, and I feel like it's kind of responsible to do that. Clean out any filth in that gear. And just one last little once over. I've got a magnifying glass up here actually I can use to inspect. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Replace the tires. You can typically buy Play-Rail ones. Now Depending on where you buy them from, you'll either pay a lot or a little. I bought 160 for 50, and that's about the best deal you're going to be able to find for these. Let's just clean up some of the other parts while we're here. I like to probably clean everything else before I start with the engine. That way the reassembly doesn't take too long. Should just come off mostly. Yeah, just surface rust. As you can see, most of it came off pretty easy. Okay. The other thing to clean off is the rods. Now, I do this, but I would not recommend it. I'm going to be real gentle. But if you get it down to an art form, it can save you a lot of time unspooling hair from axles. I mean, from rods. Okay. A once over with alcohol. There we go. Alright. Another thing left to clean is the switch. This was a spare sourced from, I don't know. I've been meaning to find replacements for these switches actually, because they break really easily. And while I am currently running a positive on them, I'm probably not going to be able to have enough sooner rather than later. Anyone knows where I can get those for a decent price, hit me up. I've been tempted to fabricate them, but that's a whole process. There we go. Alright, it's pretty much clean. Now let's move on to the engine and talk about it, because it's a little bit more confusing than your typical, but not too much stranger. First thing I like to do is just give the external a bit of a quick clean. Just to brush off so I don't get dirt everywhere. Alright. Crack. Well. Alright. So, what is actually different in these engines? Not a lot. In fact, very little. It seems like they're more just trying to build a different form factor to differentiate it. Okay? So let's have a look. If you're at all familiar with engines, these should make sense to you. This is there's that component. This, I don't know what they're called, fucking. But we can inspect them for damage. I mean, there's this piece sometimes gets damaged. Let's have a look. That's in good nick. That's a typical point of damage. Or failure, I mean. This as well sometimes. Looks pretty alright. A bit of hair. Yep. It's alright. That leaves us with just a couple more components to remove. Again, Christ. Okay. There's a bit of weird damage there. So let's clean that off and let's have a look at what we're dealing with. I'm more wondering if it's plating damage or something. Okay. It is a bit. Because it's such an interesting item, let's have a look what we've got in terms of spares. I'll do this off camera because it's a bit hard. Matching up the identical spare. Except I found it straight away, I think. Hold up. No. Wait. There's one. Alright. Gotta be careful because you've got to get the one that matches identically. Otherwise you will have fitting problems. That looks pretty good. Alright. I found this guy. Very similar. So we're good to go with that. Right. I will keep the other one. The other one's not bad, and I'd use that on a lower grade item. But again, next up we have the engine, gear, and one other piece, which is the switch. Look. For a lot of people that's usable. For me, I like to crack it, and then just... well, sometimes it comes out easier than other times. It's not going to come out, but I like to just remove that piece. So when I find a replacement plastic component, I don't have to scrap the whole thing. You may go, well, you don't need to destroy it, you could have glued it. I don't know how long glue's going to last. It's not a piece under necessarily high strain, but, again, I like to give the analogy of it's kicking a can down the road. And I'd rather kick that can as far away as I fucking can. Because that's just the right thing to do. Sorry I'm cleaning these off camera. I'll clean them a bit more in depth on camera. I'm pretty terrible for remembering which. When it comes to toothbrushes as well. I think this is the wrong one, but whatever. I'm not going to be cleaning any chassis with it anytime soon, so... move that here. Sometimes I like to rinse them first, sometimes I like to just flick them around and get some of the residual off. There we go. Alright. Interesting. That's got a fairly large black ring around it. Let's see if we can get that off. Yeah, we can. Okay. And that can go over there. Alright. Next piece. Again, with some of these, sorry I'm cleaning them off camera. It's just easier because I've got to reach over the camera otherwise. And it allows me to see how much dirt's on them. This item, surprisingly though, I'd say for an item of its age, this is a pretty typical amount of broken parts. I'm not expecting to see a ridiculously large amount. So this is about what you should expect. Switches break pretty easily. Traction tires. You got to remember the traction tires, especially, they're all 15-year-old, and rubber is not really meant to last. It's not a component designed for that. It's not really known for its longevity. Clean that. Then we'll clean the outer chassis. the outer engine components. Again, sorry, I'm doing this all off camera. I do find it interesting how they used a different engine size for this one when it relatively looks the same. A bit odd. In fact, I don't even know really what's different about this engine. All I know is it's a slightly more powerful engine. Now you may go, are you going to replace the engine on this? Are we going to see some soldering? No, I've got a very different strategy that I don't know is good or bad. It's my way of doing things. But from what I've done now, and from what I've seen, as long as it's not done poorly, it's not a bad thing to do. And it's take the engine apart. Now, you may question why not just buy a new engine. Well, the problem is for 90% of characters, buying a new engine, that is, this itself, is not really economically viable. And also good, this gear is still intact. I don't have spares of that. Ooh, that rhymed too. Jeez. I'm on fucking fire. I do not have spares of this. because it's a fairly specialized kit. Again, the more specialized things are, the harder it is to replace them. Alright, let's grab that. Let's crack this. Just crack it off camera. Again, it's tough to get some things on camera because it's a difficult process. Pop it up, take it off, inspect. It's not too bad. Needs a clean. Again, off camera because it's a bit easier that way. There we go. I mean, they do similar things with Hornby engines, so it should be fine. Because this is basically just like your XO3 engine. I think it's a 3-pole motor. Or is it 2-pole? I don't really understand the pole thing. It's not really something I'm aware of. Clean the inside. Now, I like to remove that sticker, partly because by this point, it's pretty fucking worn out. Well, not worn out, but pretty fucking disgusting from having rolled around in there for years. But it also acts as an indicator if I can't remember if I've been inside something or not. Granted, the grease should be the first indicator, but I sort of know now if I get it in again, if there's no sticker there, typically means I've tampered with it in the past. That and I can't correlate the sticker to anything important, and it's standing between me and getting a fairly clean engine. Same with this. I guess you'd call it like Sharpie markings. I like to remove them best I can. Again, it just improves look, and I don't know why they're there. They're not really important. Now the only other thing I like to do is clean these contacts in there. And just clean a bit under them. It's not too bad in there. I've seen a lot worse, although I have seen better. So there's that. Which brings us to reassembly, because now everything's fucking clean, or close. I mean, again, I don't try to aim for perfection on some of these. The engine doesn't need to be perfectly clean of that stuff, for instance. So let's start with the grease. I use molybdenum. It's for gears, plastic, and metal bearings, so seems to be alright for this kind of thing. Yes, I do lubricate these, not tons. I do like to lubricate the back one a bit more than the front one, just because there's no contacts there. Very carefully slot it in. Alright. Then I just lubricate the front one just a tad. Let me slip it over. Alright. Cap on that. And then we just get there and then press down. And we do it again. Press down. Then I just like to clean off the excess grease on the outside and then just do a spin test. Doesn't spin too freely. I mean, compare this to Trackmaster 2's. It's not quite the same. But then again, when it gets, what you'll see here in a minute is that when it gets going, it'll start slow and then build itself back up to speed as the grease works in to all the crannies. Alright. Now, apart from that, we are good to, well, now with that done, I mean, we are good now to reassemble. Again, I like to make sure that the shells are free of grease. Alcohol is the best for this because it's quick drying and it's basically blow on it and it's clean. Make sure you don't spit on it, of course. Now, I don't remember which way this thing goes in. I think it's like that. Oh, that might be too far. Well, we'll see. Okay. That should be alright. Then we get the terminal in, the new switch in, and then this piece in. That in? Yep. Then we get the screws. One of them was covered in grease, which is not good. Got for Pete's sake. The only issue with this one, compared to this other one I have, this one's far more magnetic. Oh. I do the last little bit by hand tightening so that I don't over tighten the thing. Now, let's get this. First, let's do a bit of a test fitting. Okay, just to see. Then we can chuck the battery in. As you can see, runs well. Okay, there we go. Now I can take that off, and we can start lubricating the final components and put this all back together. Now, first things first, why do I do this with every single item I buy? Well, there is a very good reason. How can I, as a seller, sell something without knowledge that it'll continue working for quite a significant amount of time, especially if it's a children's toy? This thing needs to last, well, at least the next 3 years, I'd say. By that point, people usually have moved on, or kids have moved on to different things. Namely video games, which, you know, don't have a problem with that. I play a lot of video games. It's just the way things are in this modern society, is the most pretentious thing I've ever said. I'm joking, of course. I've said far more pretentious things than that. Sometimes I like to mix it up to put different gears in different orders, because fuck it, man. I'm joking. I like sometimes to put in different gears at different times. And then we have this guy. There is a such thing as too much grease, but again, if you just sort of use the similar amount to what I'm using, you'll be fine. Greasing up this last one is a real pain, so just because you're gonna get grease on your fingers, you can't really avoid it. It's why I like to I buy 20 packs of rags from Bunnings, for instance, to do this job, because it gets it done with ease, and you just basically just go through rags like you want. They're $10 for 20 rags or something, and it's a fucking great deal. Okay, that's okay, hold up. Won't switch back. Put this on first. Yeah, this is why I like to check things. It's like, why is the switch being... Doesn't want to... Let's just loosen that a touch. It's about checking tolerances. So you see, that doesn't want to go back. So let's apply pressure where the screws would be. It should be alright. Sometimes I'm a bit worried about tolerances. It's something... Tomy's... They've got tighter tolerances than you think, so when people say simply like, oh, I'll just replace the gear axle with one from another character, it's not that easy. Because, again, you've got to make sure the parts are going to... well, basically play ball. It's really quite an annoyance. Something I run into problems with that all the time, and it's why, if you can, it's always better to use pieces from an item rather than replace them. Unless they're broken, I don't tend to replace parts. The only part I replace is usually the gear that drives the main, that drives this motor. That's only because it's a pretty common part. But granted, even then, I can't replace all of them, so... Right, wheel axle. It's the final thing you need to grease up. Again, I would say grease is 100% really fucking important in this. Because it's going to save your engine and all your components from a lot of stress. Put that in. Yep. Check. Tolerance. Yep, we're good. Alright. Final reassembly. The one thing you will note about all this, though, is time. Man, do these things take time. This has been this is one of the more relatively straightforward ones. And we're going to probably be finishing this video at about the 40-minute mark. But this is unedited, obviously. I like to do these unedited because it actually gives you an idea of how much time you have to put in to fix one of these. It's not something that's... It's something that's... You'll go, yeah, that's relatively straightforward. But it does still take time to do well. Just checking this. Replacement chassis isn't too bad, and it's not. Clean up just a little bit. Sorry about this. And obviously, I'm an idiot. Something that everyone forgets. I always forget it, so don't feel too bad about it. It's this thing. Basically just clip it in there, put that back together. Again, annoying. Also, I don't know which orientation this goes in, but at the end of the day, I sort of take the mentality of it doesn't really matter. It's just a thing. Sometimes I don't even have anything on the other side. So I sort of go, well, whatever. It is what it is when it comes to which way the coupling is flipped. I wouldn't get too bogged down in it if you just keep repairing for yourself as a reseller. You can decide how much you care. I don't think there's many people out there who care more than that. I know some people care even less than that. So, but it's up to you, really. Okay. These gonna fit. Yep. Barely, but they do. Then we have paper in. Then we have wheel set in. This in. Just like so. Clip that in. Okay. We've still got this screw to screw in, which I think was the first screw we took out. Oh. Funnily enough, so maybe it was, I think it might have been one of the first. So there's some nice symmetry to that. Then we just have coupling rods. Sometimes getting them to go in is such a hassle. Let's leave that one for the second. Let's get the other one in. It seems to be a bit more bulbous than it should be. Let's grab another one. It's just a little bit more cooperative. There we go. Quick clean. There are different sizes of these rods. I don't notice it too much. I have them all in the same drawer, but when I run into problems, I go, yeah. It's that kind of issue. Chuck it on. There you have it. Let's give it a test run. Now see if I broke anything. Wait for it. See what I mean? You basically, it starts running itself in. Sounds pretty good. I do hear a slight mechanical, a little bit of mechanical noise. Like a click and lick, lick and lick. So that's, but still, runs pretty well. We don't have too much noise when it's under pressure, under sort of a load. Oh, pick that up. That's about what I'd expect, though. So that's pretty good. This for comparison with a standard Tomy Thomas. But let that just get up to speed for a second. It's about up to speed. You notice also this is getting faster as time goes on. Again, once you run them in, I don't actually typically run them in. I run them a little bit to make sure they don't fail. But I don't need too much running in, but you can definitely tell the speed difference between the two of these. This is not the perfect example, obviously, this is one of the poorer ones, but still, you can definitely tell this one's running a lot faster. Versus this guy will escape off my table. We also note not very loud. They're fairly quiet. If your Tomy's loud, that's typically indicated that it's broken or there's something that needs to be repaired. Now we'll just grab this brush. I actually haven't used it at all. Just dab it on the chassis a bit. Just like to clean these mildly. Like this one's pretty much perfect. And there you go. Put that back together. And just check it fits. Yeah, and job done. Again, this was pretty much one of your fairly straightforward restoration jobs. Not really much to comment on there. But I mean, runs well. It looks nice now. We fixed the busted up chassis. So it looks pretty much brand new. This will be going on my eBay soon as well because I actually... this is one of the rare cases where I'm selling it because I don't really want it. I actually already have one of these. It's one I actually really like a lot. I'm not a massive Tomy collector, but there are a few items I do keep for posterity, and just because I think they're kind of neat, and this is one of them. I've got a Chinese Dragon too, just because they're kind of neat. I do need to fix up the set a little bit more. We've still got the jet engine to do some repairs on. It works. It just needs traction tires. And like I said in the previous video, I have a top, but it isn't fitting properly. So I might end up doing some more work on this beyond that and trying to figure out why this isn't working. But until that time, thank you all very much for watching this bullshit, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Or days, or whatever the fuck it is for you.